Okay, well, welcome everybody to Solar Noon Tuesday. So anyway, let me go ahead and start with some of the headlines here. And in the news this week, one of the things that we found was during the recent heat wave in California, they started really kind of the first test of using battery systems to that are customer owned to impact the grid. And according to the California Solar and Storage Association, there are about 80,000 customers currently in the state of California that have solar plus battery systems hooked up to the grid. About 76% of those are set to discharge if the grid requests power. So they were able to generate, this all has a generation capacity of in the neighborhood of 900 megawatts of available power from battery systems, which is about the same size as a mid-sized power plant. So it's still early stages, but we're starting to see this home to grid kind of situation working. To give you a sense of the amount of money that's involved here, last Tuesday on September 6th, the state of California grid spent $450 million buying excess power from outside of the state to supplement because of load demands caused by the heat wave. So that's a lot of money that could be incentivizing storage batteries, which would allow for a lot cheaper impact there. Another thing is the Solar Energy Industries Association just released their third quarter solar market insight report.
This meeting is being recorded.
And so there's a tremendous impact from the Inflation Reduction Act that's being projected in this report. We'll go into more detail about this report a little bit later on in the call because I felt like it was worthwhile going through the details of it. But essentially what they're saying is that the Inflation Reduction Act is going to increase by about 40% the amount of solar that is going to be installed over the baseline that they had already projected. So it's going to have a 40% increase, just that one act. They're anticipating that in the next 5 years, the solar industry will triple in size in the United States from about 129 gigawatts to about 336 gigawatts. Now, this is being led primarily through utility scale solar. So most of us on this call, we're concerned with residential solar and perhaps into the commercial solar. But both of those markets are dwarfed in size by the utility scale. And utility scale solar currently contributes about 4% to the nation's grid. About 4% of the electricity we use is solar. When you add wind and hydro, we're using about 21% renewable at the moment. But largely due to this Inflation Reduction Act, we could see this increase to about 50% of what the grid uses being renewable by 2030. 2022, you'll see in this chart here, we did have a fall off of installs, and that was largely due to the investigation that was started by the Commerce Department over dumping of Chinese solar panels that caused supply chain constraints. And in this diagram, you'll see that green line that flows across in the middle of those bars, that's what they projected the growth would be if there had not been the Inflation Reduction Act. So you're seeing the increase over and above what was being projected. Okay, so which states are seeing the largest growth of solar? The big three, really far and away the big three, are California, Florida, and Texas. Those are 1, 2, and 3. In the top, rounding out the top 10, Nevada, New York, Arizona, Georgia, Tennessee, New Mexico, and Michigan. So that's the top 10 in 2022. Now, the one that was kind of a surprise here is Tennessee. Tennessee in 2020 ranked 49th in solar installs out of 50 states. In 2021, it ranked 44th. And then this year it ranks 8th. The reason for this is the Tennessee Valley Authority did a big investment in solar in 2022. And also Google opened up a lot of facilities in Tennessee, and they're installing some large systems there. So the combination of Google and the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, accounts for the growth in Tennessee. So that may be a one-off, who knows? And the other bit of news this week is Nissan announced the release of a bi-directional charging station that is being produced or manufactured by Fermata Energy. And this is the first bi-directional system that's available in the US that complies with UL 9741, which is the standard regarding how V2G, vehicle to grid, works. So it's the first standards approved bi-directional charging station, and it will not impact the warranty of the Nissan vehicles, the Leaf, if you hook it up to that. So we're beginning to see the very first stages. Yeah, Bob, you got a question?
So bi-directional means you can charge your car or it'll suck it out of your car?
Yeah, it'll pump it onto the grid, should there be the need for it. And this is going to be a big deal because, for instance, I just mentioned in California how they're using battery systems when there's peak load demand. Well, in California, if you pump that power back onto the grid during these periods where the grid is requesting it, they will pay you $2 per kilowatt hour for what you're exporting to the grid, because it's cheaper than them going out on the spot market. So you could be charging it for, let's say, 20 cents a kilowatt hour, and then discharge it for $2 a kilowatt hour. And of course, if you have your own solar array, it's going to be even cheaper to charge it. So you start multiplying this out. I know Tesla, for example, is already planning to create what are essentially virtual power plants by using the Tesla fleet of vehicles. So wherever they're charging, they can also discharge. But one of the issues has been, how do you charge and discharge without affecting the warranty of the vehicle? Because the electric vehicles are designed to charge primarily. So they've come up with these standards, the UL 9741, and I guess the hope is that the automobile manufacturers will say, as long as your charging station meets these standards, it will not impact your warranty. That's what Nissan is doing, and we'll see if the rest of them follow suit. So that will be interesting. So any other questions from the news of the week here? Just shout out, because I'm in a mode here where I can't see you. So anybody? All right, so let me jump in, because I wanted to talk a little bit more about the SEIA solar market insight report. And I know last time we talked about, we're going to talk about corrosion, around seaside installs and maybe some of the galvanic. So I'll put that off for a week, because this just came out this week. So I wanted to touch base on some of the insights in this report. With this report, what they're saying is that about 39% of what's been installed so far this year is solar, 28% is wind. Let's just zoom in on that. And 26% is natural gas. Now you'll notice the solar from year to year down just a little bit, largely because of the supply constraints. We're starting to see, if you look over the past few years, in 2019, 37% of new capacity was solar, 41% in 2020, 2021, 44%, now down to 39. So we're right at the 40% there, right at about 35% for wind, and then the balance in the 20% mode for natural gas. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. Coal, nuclear, those are pretty much dead technologies as far as the grid is concerned, as far as new installation of systems. So that's currently where we are there. Now, I just had shown you the increase here with utility scale in the solar news. So we're seeing an increase. The primary motivation for the added projection above what the baseline was, that green line, is the Inflation Reduction Act. And they're looking at increasing by 40% over just because of that particular act. If I go back here, notice the proportions. The gray there is utility scale. And the blue, the light blue, is commercial, and the dark blue is residential. So even though the part of the market that we're focused on primarily is the residential or the commercial, it represents a significant minority of the amount of solar that's currently being installed. The vast majority of what's going out there is utility scale solar at the moment. We talked about the solar, the rankings here. So rounding out the top 10, I already walked through that. It's a little bit, if you guys got it on full screen, I'm going to sort of, peer in so I can read it here. I see Jersey, North Carolina, Utah, Oregon, South Carolina, Illinois. Illinois, you're ranked 16th there, Bob. Maine, Massachusetts, Virginia, kind of the ones, Puerto Rico, a little bit surprising, all the way up to 21st. I always like to make fun. Ohio. Ohio seems to want to be ranked at about 25 for everything. It's like we tend to get nervous if we're outside of the middle somewhere, except maybe college football, which they always want to be number one. But and then rounding as we go down through on this, the lower ones, what you kind of expect. Some of the less populated states, some of the sort of the deep red states down there at the bottom. So it's just curious, interesting to see how that dances around a little bit from time to time. So if we break them down into market segments, you can see that the residential marketplace here is growing, but not growing as dramatically as the utility scale. It's looking like when we look here, let's say 2022 was a banner year. We dropped down a little bit here for 2023. They're projecting, and I think some of that is supply chain issues. And we're also, as you'll see a little bit later in the report, some of the prices have gone up a little bit. And then we recover back 2024. And then we're up to about 7 gigawatts installed in 2027. Going from about 5 to 7, it doesn't look much on the chart, but that's a significant increase, 40% increase in just a couple of years. So the commercial, less of an increase, which was kind of surprising to me. I see a lot of businesses moving towards solar. And there's a lot of corporate activity with solar. So I'm surprised they're only projecting 13%. Well, there was only a 13% increase over last year, but they're not really projecting dramatic increases in commercial systems. I suspect they're going to be wrong. When you look at the incentives that are out there for commercial installations, I was just doing this add up. With the Inflation Reduction Act, they now have a baseline of 30% tax credit. But if you're in an area that's considered low income, which I think the number is, I've got it written down over here. If you're in they call it a environmental justice area. That sounds like buzzwords to me. But basically, if you're qualified low income 50% of the households have an income of less than 200% of the poverty line, or less than 80% of the overall area's median gross income. So that sort of covers all of Appalachia, which is an area that I'm dealing in. Also domestic content. So if you're using US manufactured product, you're going to get an extra 10%. So let's say that you qualify in both of those, then your investment tax credit is going to be 50% right off the bat. So, and then if you can get a USDA REAP grant, which is for low income, or not low income, but rural and agricultural businesses, and they define rural as any community less than 50,000 people, that's a 25% grant. And then if you add in accelerated depreciation, where essentially 85% of the cost of the system can be deducted in the first year, or if you go up to the 50%, it'll only be 75%. You're essentially looking at about 15% of your overall cost is going to be your out-of-pocket cost at the end of it. So if you've got $100,000 system you're installing, your out-of-pocket cost could be as low as $15,000 if you're a business. Why on earth would you not install solar, if you were in that situation? So another area that they're looking at is community solar. Community solar is actually down from 2021. So maybe that was a watershed year and now we're just going to see it leveling off. At least that's what they're projecting. And community solar is where, you have a large project that people buy into so that they only own a portion of the community solar project. Perhaps that's getting lumped into utility scale because a lot of these are developed by the utilities. In fact, solar co-ops, electrical co-ops are big into the community solar projects where they can sell off portions of the production. So that's interesting there that that's actually down. And then of course, we already looked at the utility scale solar, which is going to increase dramatically over the next few years. Although they think that there's going to be a lag through 2023, really, the supply chain lag is going to cause issue. And then the one that I thought Bob, especially here, will be interested in because of the Chicago price hikes. What is the cost of the average cost of installed solar? And they're showing that in Q2 of 2021, residential averaging nationwide was $298, so basically $3 a watt installed. Same time a year later, it's up to $3.25, so $3.25. So we're seeing an 8 to 9% increase in cost for residential, about the same for commercial, where the average cost was $1.57. Now it's up to $1.71. The reason the costs are so much lower is really because of scale. When you're installing a 100 kilowatt system as opposed to a 10 kilowatt system, there's some economies there. And then you get into the utility fixed, which was at 85 cents a watt installed. It's up to 92 cents. And if they put tracking on it, up from 95 to $1.07. So pretty much straight across the board, about an increase of 8 to 9% during the last year.
Jay?
So, yeah.
I keep running into this every time we do these quarters. I am still confused why commercial is half the price that what it is for residential. Are they using magic or something here?
I think it's really just the size of the systems. I mean, they're saying the average cost here is $1.70. I've not, when I go out and do an estimate, I'm putting closer to $225, $250 for my estimates.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing 500 kW systems. So it could be that because some of these commercial systems can be quite large, they're almost approaching utility scale in size. But anything less than 100 kilowatts, I would still put in a $2 at least per watt system, pricing. So I don't know. This is just what they report. They didn't tell me what the size was per se.
So what kind of inverters are they using in these systems?
Yeah, I think large, obviously pretty large inverters or multiple. You can, when you're designing these systems, you can either go in with a very large, like a 100 kW inverter, or you might more likely, at least again, if I were doing it, I'd put in 3 or 4 30 kW inverters, just to sort of share the risk around a little bit. Even Solar Edge has a little 30 kW inverter that's not that pricey. So, it all depends on the systems. I'm not into that big systems that some folks are doing. Like, I don't know if Devinan's on the call, but he does some pretty big systems down in there in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, out here, there are people clamoring for me to put on their flat roofs systems on office buildings and stuff like that. And I'm a little gun shy on it because of the cost. I'm going to give them a cost, and next thing I know, I'm going to be paying for their rent for the next 30 years.
Yeah, the risk is always a little bit bigger with the commercial systems. I've known a number of solar installation companies that have got themselves in trouble because they put in a big system and then have trouble collecting, from the customer. It's like all your eggs are in one basket. So, anything that goes wrong is a big problem instead of a lot of little problems. But that said, there are folks out there who are making a really good return by putting in these larger systems. But it's risky.
That's why, as an installer, I only do cash in advance.
Yeah.
100%. And I tell them I'm not a financial company.
Yeah.
I'm a contractor. And so go get your finance from the guys who will take the risks when they don't pay. But I can't even afford one of them.
Yeah, I think what ends up happening with the very large systems, of course, is that you typically have financing people involved in your discussions and in your contracting. And then the bank, will come back and say, okay, they've secured the financing, and now we're going to set up a number of points where you can draw from the money. So they'll say, okay, now once the product is on site, we'll give you another draw. Once the racking is in place, we'll give you another draw.
Right.
Once the panels are installed. So you do have a certain amount of assurance when you're dealing with the bank in that way. At least you hope you do. So unless you mess up, then it's kind of on you.
I never mess up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So anybody have any feedback? This was basically the report that we had this week. It looks like I really think that's going to be understated. If I were making projections, just based on the fact that now we're going to have this massive incentive of up to 50% just from the investment tax credit. And I really think we're going to see people going crazy installing solar.
In most industries that I've looked at, 10% of the people make 90% of the money, and 90% make 10% of the money.
Sure.
So who are the 10% going to be making the money here?
Well, I think domestic manufacturing is going to for sure do well because people are going to be incentivized with a 10% tax credit to buy domestic. So some of those folks who are maybe on the borderline deciding whether they wanted to open up manufacturing here in the US There's, that's a dangerous business to try and figure out who's going to be the winner and who's going to be the loser. Community solar, I would have bet was going to do quite well, because only about, some estimates only show 25% of the homes are suitable for solar. And there's a lot of incentives in these programs for low income, and low income are going to be primarily renters. So that's really a community solar kind of deal there. So the community solar, I know your favorite group of those people who are solar leasing, hopefully they fall by the wayside, but it wouldn't surprise me to see some big national chains, get into solar, as it becomes much more mainstream, because people are concerned when they're dealing with fly-by-night operators, but if a company like Walmart says we'll stand behind it, and they have local people contracting through them, sort of like what Tesla has tried to do, we may see some of that.
Well, so if you take Enphase, for example, they're buying up distributors right now. And the number one national distributor is owned by them. Bottom line is, I'm seeing them building blocks up, so they're going to start installing, I'll bet you. They have all of the pieces. It just makes perfect sense for them just to start installing them.
Yeah, it's possible. I guess I'll go back to some of my history when I used to be involved. It's hard to make the analogy or the leap between the comic book industry and solar. But back when I was in the comic book industry, we were a distributor of comic books, but our company also had retail outlets. And there's a balance there. There's a difficulty of competing with your customers, because a lot of the customers were saying, listen, you're my competition. Why would I buy wholesale from you when you're going to go out there and bid against me, as an installer? So that's a balance.
There's companies out there already doing that.
Yeah. And, it builds up resentment, especially if you lose a job to them. Then you're going to say, well, why would then I buy my product from you? If there's a choice, if there's an alternative.
I can't think of the name of the company. They're very large. They manufacture their own panels. They're at 22% efficiency panels. I can't remember who they are. All I know is I went to buy from them. They said I have to first be a distributor.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, they wanted you to. That seems a little dodgy. You could certainly buy them from a distributor, but then you're paying the markup, that the distributor puts on it. So
yeah, they just want a piece of your action. That's all.
Yeah. Well, distributors do provide a service. So you're going to be paying, hopefully a good distributor will be worth their portion of the markup, because they're going to deal with the warranty issues, and they're going to deal with the delivery issues and, the inventorying and things like that. So, hopefully you're getting a wise. There are also buying groups that you can join into. So that's another thing to explore, where a number of installers can come together and use their purchasing power as a group to buy through a distributor. So that's something to look at locally within your area. Right. Any other questions from the group? Nope. Okay. Well, sounds like we're going to be ending early today. So appreciate everybody's attention. And next time we'll talk a little bit about corrosion, perhaps, unless something exciting comes up. Corrosion. How can we say that's not exciting?
I love your graphics.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're getting high tech here. All right. So I'll talk to you guys all later. Bye-bye.